And welcome back to Whiskey Politics. I'm Dave Sussman, your host and purveyor here at Whiskey Politics. You can find us at Whiskey Politics on YouTube, at the Ricochet Network. You can also find our show on Apple Podcasts. Please subscribe to YouTube and Apple Podcasts as well. Hit a nice 5-star review with a little bit of a comment that can help others find us. And you can also find us on all other podcasts as well, including Stitcher. And we've got some news coming up in the next couple of weeks regarding some new platforms that we're about to be a part of. Very exciting for us here at Whiskey Politics. So further to the MSNBC interview with Joe Biden, it seems that the Tara Reade accusations are now starting to get the coverage in the mainstream media. A lot of people were wondering why they weren't. A lot of people are talking about it, and as far as I'm concerned, I think anyone that is making these kind of accusations better be able to prove it. Many folks are calling out the media for what they see as double standards, comparing the lack of coverage on Biden to what we saw was an overwhelming amount of coverage regarding the Kavanaugh accusations that led to some really big, huge cultural splits in this country. But I'll say the same thing about Biden as I said about Kavanaugh. Each person is constitutionally afforded due process, but we should assume innocence until enough proof comes out that suggests otherwise. And to discuss this, we wanted to have a Biden insider and a supporter join us. And, well, Moe Vela certainly is both. Moe served in 2 White Houses, first under Vice President Al Gore in the Clinton administration, and then as senior advisor to Vice President Joe Biden under the Obama administration. As a senior advisor to Joe Biden, Moe was the Director of Management and Administration, a Chief Transparency Officer, and also oversaw human resources. We cover Tara Reade's allegations and whether there is a double standard in the media, especially in the age of Me Too and post-Kavanaugh. We discuss the economy and Joe's chances in November, and we discuss a lot about Trump in that, and whether Biden is actually mentally fit enough to become president of the United States. We also discuss why Joe suggested his first priority for selecting a vice presidential candidate would be gender. You know Moe from CBS News, Fox News, The Hill, Yahoo TV, Bloomberg, BBC, Politico, and many more. Now, he isn't a fire-breathing leftist, although he certainly does support his former boss, and we cover a lot in a relatively short period. I was originally going to make this episode a twofer and pair this interview with Carrie Severino, who you remember from our Whiskey Politics episode with Molly Hemingway, who they both wrote the go-to book on Kavanaugh. It was called Justice on Trial. But after the interview with Moe, I thought that this was standalone. Check in next week for the interview with Carrie Severino, and also the week after for our sit-down with Dave Rubin. But in the meantime, this discussion with Moe Vela is a rollicking, sometimes contentious, but highly enjoyable conversation. At least I thought so, and I hope you do too. Now, Moe, welcome back. How are you? Good,
hey,
sir.
It's good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, okay. First reaction to what you saw this morning with Joe Biden on Mika Brzezinski over at MSNBC.
Yeah, I thought the vice president actually was incredibly forthright. His sincerity and his genuineness was on full display. And, I've been publicly for a while now very, very clear about the fact that we have to be really careful, Dave. I'm a full supporter of the Me Too movement. However, I'm a little different than most Democrats and frankly, probably most people in the sense that we have to be careful with this presumption of truth. It's not that way, as you know, in the court of law, and I really don't believe we should do it that way in the court of humanity. People have the right to express their concerns. Miss Reade has that right. She has a right to be heard. She has a right to be respected, and we have an obligation to listen, but it must be investigated. There's no presumption of truth. So I thought the vice president did an excellent job this morning of being very clear and straightforward with the American people, Dave.
Look, I don't know if Biden is guilty. I've been an outspoken advocate that the whole believe all women is, quite frankly, just negating the due process. And there's a lot of false accusations that are floating out there due to the Me Too-ism of our culture over the past couple of years. And so when I take a look at what is going on and the reaction to this, it really is from the left. I think whether or not the guilt is evident, I don't know. We weren't there. Let that process come out. But what the left is trying to do, let's go back to Kavanaugh for a minute, Mo. The left tried to destroy Kavanaugh based upon testimony far, far sketchier than what Tara Reade's account is right now. Is there a double standard?
No, not at all. And I don't agree. I respectfully disagree, of course, that it's far sketchier in any way. Look, Miss Blasey, Christine Blasey, I think was her name.
Ford, yeah.
Ford, thank you. She had the right to do what she did as well, just like Miss Reade does and anybody else. By the way, it's not just women. Men can be victimized too. So it's any human who feels maligned has the right to say something. But they don't have the right to presume that they're telling the truth, because we have too many people, as you said earlier, who have falsely accused others. And so look, on the Kavanaugh thing, this isn't double standards. The bottom line is everybody has the right to be heard. Everybody has the right to express themselves. We've got to listen. We have to take it seriously, but it must be investigated. Miss Ford hers was very much investigated by an entire committee of the United States Senate, and a majority of them determined they didn't believe her, and that was the outcome. So it's the same thing here. Very credible journalists, very credible journalistic outlets have investigated, they've listened, the facts have been out there, and it doesn't add up, Dave. And so again, it's gone through a process. I say let's move on. I think this is unequivocally false allegation by Ms. Reade. I know Joe Biden. I know his character. I know his integrity. I did not know Justice Kavanaugh's. I can't speak on that. I just can't. But I never once publicly said that Ms. Ford, was presumptively telling the truth. Again, the facts have to come out. The story has to be told, and then we get to determine whether it's true or not.
So when we take a look at what Joe Biden is talking about right now, and I'm with you on the fact that everything should be heard out. I'm not one of those individuals, whether you're on the left or the right, that should just automatically believe somebody because they're accusing somebody, especially in such a heightened political climate that we have right now. I think it's dangerous. It's ruined.
And with social media, Dave.
Yes, absolutely. But is there, and I use the word double standard because we're seeing a lot of people on social media right now, which I can't stand, but unfortunately it's now a necessary evil in our society for communication purposes, that have immediately locked in to their, I would not call it a groupthink, based upon their political perspective of whether they are for or against Joe Biden. You don't see that as an issue right now?
No, I really don't. I think, again, Miss Reade has had the chance to tell her story. So did Miss Ford. So have many others, right? Some Weinstein's victims, for example, were proven to be true. He's incarcerated as we speak because of it, right? Kevin Spacey, I think one of the cases against him was dropped, for example. Some still remain, right, that are outstanding. It just depends on the story and the consistency and are there discrepancies? The one thing I remember from law school, because I didn't listen very well, but I do remember this. You're innocent until you're proven guilty.
Absolutely.
And so we have to be really careful. I'm a Me Too fighter. I agree. Nobody should be victimized, not just women, but not men either. Nobody should be victimized. But for God's sakes, let's not start this slippery slope of saying that, look, God forbid, you're a public figure. Obviously you're a journalist. You have this wonderful show. Anybody that could have hated you in high school could today go on social media and make up something horrible about you. Yeah. And then under this Me Too thing, we're going to believe them because we're going to presume. No. They're going to have to demonstrate to the public, if this accusation against you, how is it true? Let me hear the facts. Let's put it out there. But assuming they're telling the truth,
So you're saying something that I've been saying now for years. I was on a television show a couple of months ago screaming about this, and I was being yelled at that I was anti-Me Too. No, I'm for Me Too. I'm against anybody abusing power in any position.
Absolutely.
Okay, absolutely.
But we're both going to get some hate mail, but I'll tell you something.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I hope whoever listens to us understands that we are for the victim when there is a legitimate and real victim.
But so with that being said, I can't help because it's just in our rearview mirror, and the country was so divided on this. And I'm talking about Kavanaugh, and it was almost, I mean, we had people screaming and banging at the Supreme Court of the United States of America, banging down the doors, believe all women. You had Hazy Marano from Hawaii telling men just to shut up. I can't help but think that there has been a double standard right now, because I'm seeing people, friends of mine, Democrats on the left or on the far left, that have immediately fallen into supporting Joe Biden. Forget what Tara Reade has said or hasn't said. And by the way, there hasn't been a chance for Tara to come out with her story yet. The New York Times, I mean, I don't understand why people in the media right now are saying that the New York Times suggested that there's no there. They really kind of came down the middle, didn't they?
She did speak with them for hours. She has gotten to tell her story. I disagree with you, again, respectfully, but she has been interviewed for hours at a time by the New York Times. They did get to do.
Did they speak with the 3 or 4 witnesses that actually remember her report?
Yeah, somebody, Business Insider just quoted.
And the Business Insider is kind of blown up on them.
But remember, first it was sexual harassment, and then 27 years later was sexual assault. Also, remember, for 27 years, she's been commending Joe Biden publicly for his advocacy of women. When the mother called in, she said, well, she didn't really want to do anything out of respect for her boss. Most victims don't respect the perpetrator. So we could go on and on. There are about 20 to 25 examples that just completely throw this into suspicion, discrepancies, inconsistencies. The story has changed dramatically over 27 years. You're going to tell me that he was vetted after 36 years in the Senate. He was vetted by the Obama vetting team. He was vice president for 8 years. Let's move on. Seriously. The bottom line is there's no double standard. I never said a word about Justice Kavanaugh. I don't know Justice Kavanaugh. Yeah. I listened to the testimony just like anybody else. However, if you want to worry about double standards, let's go back just a little further, because it's in our rearview mirror too. There are over 24 women who have accused President Trump of sexual assault. Now, why aren't we spending an hour on that? Because that's never been resolved, and I've never heard those women's stories.
Well, we did.
And let's talk about the fact that he paid off Stormy Daniels, and Michael Cohen went to jail for it.
And Stormy Daniels has since come out. It's been reported over a year ago that she kind of made the whole thing up. That's
1 out of 20 something, Dave.
Yeah.
My only point is, if you're worried about double standards, then let's talk about.
I'm worried. Here's what I'm worried about, and I think this is where you and I can agree. I am worried about the fact that the Me Too movement has been hijacked by a political movement, and they're using Me Too as a weapon. And what that does is, first of all, it puts targets on people that may or may not be guilty. That altogether with due process, the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th Amendments are thrown out of the window. But the second issue is that it diminishes the impact of what Me Too was trying to do, which is what you and I were talking about earlier, and that is it is taking away the storyline from the people that are truly abused. Are there abusive relationships in corporate America and in politics and Hollywood? Absolutely. And the Weinsteins of the world should be thrown away in jail for life.
That's right. Absolutely. And it's despicable, and it's incorrigible, and it's wrong, and it will always be wrong. You're right. We can agree on this. We absolutely can agree on this.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask you this. You worked with Joe Biden. You're seeing obviously the COVID-19 situation, the pandemic has taken, I guess, the hard-hitting politics off the mainstream news on a daily basis. It will start to come back over the summer a little bit, especially as we get closer to the election. What are your thoughts of Joe Biden right now, candidate Biden? And as we head towards the election, what are you looking at here?
Here's what I'm looking at. I think that this has been, for any candidate at any time in American history, this exact situation would have been an extreme challenge. Why? Because we are facing probably the greatest crises, arguably, in at least many decades in the United States. I'm not going to say ever, but it certainly ranks up there in the top 3 or 4 or 5. And so this would have been hard, Dave, for any candidate on any party to be in the situation. The president has the bully pulpit and the power of incumbency. Arguably he's used it in a very strategic manner. Most would argue that he probably used those press conferences a little bit more politically than he should have. But you know what? It's the bully pulpit. And so for Joe Biden, this has been a challenge, I'm sure. But honestly, I'm kind of proud of him. You have to be careful. You can't politicize the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And you have to respect the fact that right now our focus should be on trying to get us out of the ditch, right? And get back up out of the ditch. And that means getting our economy revived and back up and running again, but not to do it in a haphazard way or not to do it in a way that's going to put people at risk again. And so you got to criticize, but I think what he's done extremely well, to be honest with you, is contrast. And I think that's all you can do in this situation is contrast your leadership style, how you would have handled things differently, propose solutions to the problems, which he's done. He warned in January in an op-ed. Nobody listened to him. He warned us in January that this was coming, and nobody listened. Unfortunately, the president, as we all know, went golfing and did political rallies in February and pretended a miracle was going to take this away. And so, look, I'm very proud of him because I think he's done a good job of finding that balance of, first of all, what are his greatest gifts? Compassion, empathy. He's the antithesis in so many ways of Donald Trump in a time, in a crisis for this nation where we needed somebody who can shed a tear, who can really remember that, look, I've lost a friend in this thing myself. And I'll tell you something, every minute I wake up every day, I'm grateful. I'm sure you are as well. I'm just grateful I'm healthy.
Yeah.
Because this is serious stuff, man. This is somebody's mom. This is somebody's grandmother, somebody's uncle, somebody's brother, somebody's child.
Yeah. The numbers are absolutely tragic and horrifying, and you cannot in any way discount that. And you've got to take the politics out of all of that, especially.
If I could share one thing with you, if you don't mind, this is something I feel I'm very passionate about because I've been fortunate and honored to serve my country twice in the White House. I was Al Gore's senior advisor and CFO, and then again, as we know, Biden's. And in both tenures, Dave, I sat on the White House Continuity of Government and Emergency Preparedness Working Group. So there aren't a whole bunch of us, right, that get to come on camera and say, I was in that room twice in my life. And I know what it takes to sit there every other week that we met, regardless of whether there was a crisis or not. We were planning and we were preparing for pandemics, cyber attacks, terrorist attacks, whatever the crises may be. So I speak very passionately about this because I know what this White House was supposed to have done. And I know how blatant it is that wasn't done.
Yeah, folks, we've got Moe Vela, who was the senior advisor to Joe Biden, and what we just learned with also Al Gore with us. And we're talking obviously about what is going on right now. Joe Biden was on MSNBC earlier. Mika Brzezinski was asking him questions about the Tara Reade situation. And unfortunately, that is not something that he can't ignore anymore because it's just, it's mushroomed up. But I gotta ask you a couple of questions because first of all, you referred to going back to January, and you said that Joe Biden was warning that this was coming, and Donald Trump was playing golf. Donald Trump took a tremendous amount of incoming from closing the borders to China. Doesn't that get him any credit from the left?
If you want to talk to the families of the 63,000 people and you think that they're worried about him getting credit for leaving China, first of all, 40,000 Chinese people came
you're conflating two issues there.
No, I'm not. If you're talking about closing the border to China, why don't we state all the facts? How many people came in spite of that?
Well, the people that came in were expatriates. They were patriots. They were.
How many people came in spite of that?
The question is that when he did this, he took a tremendous amount of incoming from the media, from many on the left. I don't know what your opinion was at the time, that were calling him a xenophobe and a racist for doing this. You know,
Dave, I'm one of the few people you'll have on who actually is an equal opportunity critic.
Yep.
Right? I was talking about Bernie Sanders socialism being horrible for America from day one. I'm one of the few Democrats who would have the courage to get up and tell the truth. Look, if you want me to give the president credit for something, if you think that's what it is, fine. But it's not erasing the fact that I sat on the council. I know what should have been done, my friend. It was not
what
done.
should have been, if Joe Biden was in office in January?
You would have never seen the dismantling of the pandemic response office. You would have never seen it. You can go back and see a speech from Barack Obama just a few years ago saying, we are susceptible to a global pandemic. And Trump comes in and dismantles the office. You got to plan and prepare continuously in this country. That's what responsible leaders do. I've been in the room, my friend. Yeah. And here's the deal. You know why you plan and prepare?
So explain this dismantling that took place, because I've heard this a couple of times, and I've also heard it been fought back against, that didn't take place. What is your perception of what
was
took place?
Was Dr. Birx in the pandemic response office before this? No.
But there was no pandemic to respond to.
You don't wait for a pandemic. That's the whole point. That's the fallacy. If you wait, this is what happens. 63,000 innocent people die when you wait. See, you don't wait. You have to be proactive. So we were meeting every week of my tenures in both White Houses. Right. I was, by the way, on the Y2K Council. You're too young to probably remember that. But no. My God,
I'm not that young. We were partying like it was 1999.
We met, seriously, we met for 18 months every week to prepare so that the Y2K transition was seamless.
Yeah. And that was a good transition. Nothing happened.
It was seamless, wasn't it? Because we planned and we prepared. And you plan and you prepare so you can prevent. When you can't prevent, in a case like a pandemic, you have to perform. But you don't golf and go to political rallies and talk about how 15 becomes 0 with a miracle. That's not how you handle it.
You're referring to deep in January, and this is also, and you have to remember.
No, I'm talking about all of February.
But you had politicians. You had Nancy Pelosi telling people to come to Chinatown.
We're talking about Donald Trump.
But my point is that this is becoming political, right? And the fact is that the facts were changing on a day-to-day basis, don't you think?
My friend, I just told you why it's not political to me. Because I have real life experience in that White House, in that room.
Right.
If it was the opposite, I would tell you it was the opposite. If you want me to say something good about the president and that will make you and your audience feel better, then you know what? Good for you.
It's not about feeling better. I'm just trying to find, because everything is so politicized. The mainstream media right now is cancerous. Because it seems to me that there are so many people in the media that are purporting one side of an issue or one perception, or not reporting something specifically so that it doesn't look good or bad for one particular politician.
So can we agree? Can we agree on this, though? Maybe we can agree on this. That this is how I view it. I don't necessarily disagree with you. But what I always tell people when I debate them on these political issues on TV shows, I would say, if you would just own the fact that this president has contributed greatly to what you just described by the fabrications, by the misleading, by the lying, if you will own that, then we can have a really civilized dialogue, because you'll own the fact that that has contributed to the problem. And I own the fact that maybe some people are so fed up with it and so upset that they may skew the news a little bit. So, but both sides have to agree that there's responsibility.
You're talking about journalists skewing the news.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm saying there's responsibility on both sides and contribution on both sides.
Well, there are, and this president, whether you like him or dislike him, he does have a habit of somewhat meandering. We saw that last week with the whole Clorox thing, where nobody in their right minds would say that he was telling people to drink Clorox, but people in the media went with it. We know that he was talking about UV light and whether or not that could be capsulized and some kind of disinfectant to be able to clean out the lungs. He was talking out loud, and I agree with you 100% that when you look at it, you're like, what are you doing, President Trump, right? What are you saying? He was thinking out loud, and I don't like that. And he was giving fodder to people who want to be critical of him. But let me go back to another issue here, because I'm so thankful to have you on the show. And
words matter, by the way. I think that's the outcome of that discussion. Words matter.
Words do matter, and I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. He's not a wordsmith. He's not a tactician when it comes to choosing words. But let me ask you another question, because right now the polls are suggesting, if you believe the polls, a lot of people do, that former Vice President Biden is in the lead in multiple states, could probably win the election if it was held today against President Trump. Whether or not, again, you believe the polls suggested different things in 2016, and look what happened. But we're all together in a different world. But I want to come back to your experience working with Joe Biden then and Joe Biden today. And I don't know how close you are to the Biden campaign and him personally. A lot of people, Mo, are really genuinely concerned. And this is not an insult. They are genuinely concerned about his mental acuity. What do you say to that?
Well, here's what I'll say to that. Couple things. One, I caution anybody to be careful. I lost my father to dementia. I know dementia extremely well. Joe Biden does not have dementia. I know it. I lived it for literally 16 years. So I find it offensive when people imply that anybody has it when they don't. Okay? Number one. Number two, Joe Biden has been a stutterer since he was a child. And I find it, secondly, very offensive when people start going there and questioning someone's mental acuity because his stutter remains a part of a challenge in his life. And to me, I rather focus on the fact that he overcame it. And he still has some of it. And you know what? I'm not going to fault him for that. And anybody who does, I find it despicable. Number three, I know Joe Biden. He's a personal friend of mine. I love him. I respect him. I admire him. And so do millions of other Americans and people around the world. And I will tell you this. He is the same loving, brilliant, honorable man of character and integrity that I knew 10 years ago that I worked for and had the privilege of calling my boss. And I call him my friend today, and he is exactly as sharp. And I'll tell you, Dave, I don't know how athletic you are, but he can outrun you and I around the block in a heartbeat. And I bet you can do more crunches than you and I combined, and push-ups.
He does say that, and he'd like to take Trump behind the...
He's not joking. He's not joking. And I'm not either.
Are you... Okay, so, I mean, we're having an honest discussion here. At Absolutely. 78 years old, he will be the oldest president ever elected, and that will be at the beginning of his first term. Mm-hmm. You love the man. You've worked with the man.
Yeah.
Age happens, okay? Yeah. I mean, we can't ignore that fact. That is not a concern to you?
You know, as before you and I went on camera, we were joking about how aging sucks. Of course, age matters. I just simply said to you before we went on camera, look at my gray beard. Things start changing. Look, that's part of the process of life. So no, it doesn't concern me. He's a very vigorous 77-year-old man. I just told you he can outrun you and I. I promise you he can outrun you and I. I know he can outcrunch me, probably not you, but he can do more push-ups than me. I don't know about you, but that's not saying much about me, right? But the bar's very low when you're talking about me doing push-ups. However, the point I'm trying to make is he's a very vigorous, healthy 77-year-old. I don't worry about it for a second. Listen, if he ever found himself not qualified or capable or prepared to hold the office, he'd be the first one to tell this country. Everyone knows that about Joe Biden. He's honest. He tells the truth. He looked in the camera this morning. He looked America in the eye and he said, this never happened. And it's, as far as I'm concerned, let's move on. The man's vigorous. He's ready to lead. He's going to be an incredible president. And I'll tell you what this election is about. Not for me just politically. It's about decency, Dave. It's about decency and values. And I think when people get into the voting booth in November, that's what's going to make the final decision. Do you want the one spewing hatred and division and you know, encouraging the governor of Michigan to compromise with gun-toting people charging into the state capitol?
That was a bad look for the right.
If those folks had been African-American or Latino from my Latino community, they'd be in jail, brother.
Yeah, no, that was a bad look. And listen,
And the president enabling it.
We can
Is that what you want in November? If that's what your values are, vote for Donald Trump. That's what I say.
Mo, I will say this because I will agree with you. That was a bad look for those guys that were wielding guns at the state capitol. That was not necessary. You can protest and you don't have to look like a militia. But at the same time, when we're talking about what's her name, Gretchen Whitmer, the governor. Okay, she just extended out again, for a relatively small population in Detroit, for the rest of the entire state. Are you concerned at all about certain politicians and certain governors overreaching right now, which is going to impact the economy in some way?
Republican, Democrat, I don't think have any independent governors right now or libertarians. But even if we did, whatever the political stripe, Dave, come on now. We have to defer the governor of a state and hope that they use their best judgment. And I don't know about you, but I'm going to give all of them, all 50 of them, the benefit of the doubt that they're going to make the best decision for their state. Do I know that the Georgia governor made the right decision? I don't know the data in Georgia.
Okay, so
I trust that Gretchen Whitmer is looking at the numbers. She's not seeing the indicators that make her feel comfortable at putting her citizenry at risk.
But Kemp is taking.
I'm not criticizing
Governor Kemp is taking tremendous incoming, though, right?
What now?
Georgia Governor Kemp is taking tremendous incoming.
Not from me. I haven't said a word. I'm just telling you he's the governor of his state. Here's the bad news. For Whitmer, Kemp, DeSantis, whichever one it is, here's the good news and the bad news. You're the leader of your state. You get to decide when you reopen and how you do it, right? Mm-hmm. Here's the bad news. If people die, it's on your hands.
Well, it's not a matter of if people die. People are dying. Well, and I here's the thing, and this is something that I think is a non-political perspective. I think it's just common sense to me. This was not something that was created by any president or any politician. It was,
and I never said that.
And it was whether it was created in a lab or it happened, in Wuhan, and it came over.
Viruses happen.
Whatever. Viruses happen. Pandemics happen. Right. And so they've been calling. We've all seen the Bill Gates TED Talk 5 years ago. They've been calling for this for decades. Okay,
Obama called for it just a few years ago.
Yeah, Obama, and we had tens of thousands of people that died with obviously the other whether it was the bird flu or all the
we didn't on Ebola, right? We didn't on Ebola because we handled it right. See, plan,
but it also wasn't as contagious. Right. This is
nothing.
Inarguably, this is one of the most contagious things we've seen in 100 years.
The most contagious is what I'm hearing, but I don't know.
Right. So that makes a huge difference. So I don't care who's in the White House. You can have God Almighty himself that can stop it. That's about it. But the thing, my question for you in all of this is that the next couple of 3 months are going to play out with certain states being more aggressive in opening up than others. Mm-hmm. It is inarguable, Mo, that the economy was going 120 miles an hour down the racetrack. Now, is there inequity and is there differences in classes? And of course, that's going to be in any society. And we can have that discussion. But unemployment was at the lowest levels it's ever been in many, many different demographics. Wages were going up. We were seeing really, really good numbers that we haven't seen in decades. If the trajectory was to show back in maybe by September or October, because I don't think we're going to see numbers before that the numbers in the economy are going to start going back up again. Do you think Trump has a better chance? Right now, the numbers don't look good for Trump, but we're in the middle of this. What is I'm not asking you to prognosticate, but please prognosticate.
Well, I apologize. I didn't ever answer your question when you said about the polls. And it's kind of tied to this question as well. Look, I'm not a big fan of polls. I'm one of the few Democratic strategists or political type guys that will get on any show and say, I don't trust them. Okay. I don't just trust them because of 2016. I haven't trusted them for a long, long time. The only reason I'll look at polls is to see patterns, right? Because otherwise they're just freeze frames of a moment in time. But if you see patterns over a longer period of time, I'll look at it and see a pattern, and I might kind of respect that. But to your question, look, Donald Trump hitched his entire wagon, as we all know, to the economy. I would have done the same thing. I'm not faulting him. The only thing I fault him on the economy is trying to pretend that it was all his. He inherited a very strong economy from Barack Obama. Let's be factual and let's be fair here. He inherited a great economy. He might have made it stronger. I'm not going to deny him that. See, you wanted some credit? I'll give him a little credit on that. But here's the deal. You hitch your wagon. This is politics 101. You know this. If you hitch your wagon 100% to one thing, you are playing a very risky game. So I don't know how well this economy is going to bounce back. What I do know is 30 million people are unemployed today, right? That I know. What I also know
are closer
is
to 40. Yeah,
I think it is too, which is just nauseating.
Yeah.
But here's the deal. When small businesses collapse, they don't come back in the same manner that large companies do.
Agreed.
And they're on the brink, many of them, of not just deterioration, but complete collapse. And if that happens, and let me just be very clear with you and anybody listening, I am not hoping that this is the case. I am not politically driven that way, and I don't know anybody who would be thinking this way.
Yeah, I think you're an honest broker. I do.
I'm not hoping this is it, but I just don't think that the numbers will bounce back in a manner that would be favorable to Donald Trump to be able to make the argument. It's
a question about the trajectory. I agree with you. I'm a small business advisor outside of this.
Yeah.
And the thing that I'm seeing right now is absolute devastation. The banks aren't lending. We're not seeing cash flow moving through the economy. It's the lifeblood of the economy. They're expecting 30 to 40%. I think it was, what's his name from Starbucks, Howard Schultz.
Yeah, Howard
Schultz said 30 to 40% of small businesses will not reopen after this. That's horrific.
If that happens, there's no number that will look good in October, right? Yeah. Think about it. There's no number. Because those folks are the backbone of this nation.
But does Donald Trump take the blame, do you think, by the American public, the voters? Because we know what was happening up until COVID-19.
So, Dave, my response to that is this. You heard the same thing I heard. In my lifetime of 58 years, and having had the honor and privilege of serving in there twice, I've never, Republican or Democrat, heard a president shirk responsibility. I have never seen anybody do what he has done in shirking the responsibility of that office.
I have to take issue. I'm sorry, I have to take issue with that. Barack Obama was blaming George W. Bush the entire first term for the economy.
Well, I don't know, because I was in there and I was across this hall from the Recovery Act. So I disagree with you 100%, again, from personal knowledge, right? I watched Barack Obama stand up and say to Joe Biden, can you please head up this Recovery Act so we can save our economy? And they did.
And we didn't see a GDP.
And they did.
But
so I didn't hear Barack Obama blaming. I heard Barack Obama doing.
He talked about inheriting continuously.
But he did inherit a mess. And whoever comes next to this one,
agreed.
Whoever comes next this time is going to inherit a bigger mess.
I agree with that. My point being, I didn't want to interject. I want you to finish your point. My point being is that for 8 years, we heard about previous administration's problems. I think every administration does that to a certain extent. Trump is very vocal about this, and he isn't shy, and he's not politically, correct about it or in any way whatsoever. So it's very abrasive for some people to hear.
Can I ask you a question?
That's not something that I think is only to Trump. Is my point.
Can I ask you a point? Can I ask you a question? And I'm this is from the bottom of my heart. It's not a loaded one. Are you okay with the president saying he doesn't take any responsibility for anything?
I don't think he has. I don't think he has said that.
Well, next time we're on together, I'm going to bring you the tape.
Like yesterday, he said that he, listen, I am not a cheerleader for Donald Trump here, okay? My politics are right of center when it comes to the economy, but I'm a moderate on most issues.
Me too, by the way.
So is Donald Trump somebody that out of the 17 candidates, just so that you know my background, in 2016, out of the 17 original Republican candidates, he was number 17 for me. Okay. But at the end of the day, I chose him over her. Now, here's the thing. As a business advocate, as a business advisor, I take a look at results. I take a look at the economy. I take a look at I take a look at regulations. I take a look at judges. I take a look at actual results. And I have to personally, as a person that had a lot of personal problems with Trump in the campaign of 2016, have to separate the person from the results. At the end of the day, I've got a family to support, as you do. And if the economy is doing better, something is going right. Now, I heard Donald Trump yesterday, to answer your question directly, say that he, in his late hours alone at night, all he is thinking about are those people that are being affected by this, the families that are losing loved ones. I couldn't imagine the gravity of that. And I've been saying this for months. If you had a senior advisor like yourself, okay, coming into the president at the Resolute desk and saying, Mr. President, we've got a tidal wave about to hit. You have to do one of two things. Either A, shut down the economy in an unprecedented way, which has never happened before, which is going to cause cataclysmic damage across all members of the economy, or B, millions of people will die. What do you do? And I couldn't imagine being in that position. He's a human being with warts and all. I think he made the right decision. Has he managed it effectively? I'm sure there's going to be books and movies and films for decades that are going to question that.
I don't know anybody, I really don't, who's questioned the fact that we had to shut down the country to save people's lives.
Right.
That's not an issue. Okay. I asked you, and you said you had a family. And so this is when I get really pensive about this. And it really goes to my core, because I understand that people, clearly you made it very clear right now in your answer that you're driven by your pocketbook. I actually am still driven by values, because to me, there's no amount of money that is, and if you want your children,
they're not mutually exclusive.
If you want, I agree, they're not mutually exclusive, but you didn't mention them at all. You see, you said, here are my criteria. Not one of your criteria involved humanity. All of it was about economics and money. I think, I want your children, okay. I actually want your children to see decency. I want them to see integrity. I want them to see compassion. Yesterday was the first time Donald Trump has said anything like that since the beginning of this. And when he was asked over 6 weeks ago, do you take responsibility? He said, I do not. So I will play that tape for you. Okay. You say he's never said that. He said it verbatim.
Again, not the wordsmith, and I wouldn't have responded that way.
This isn't about wordsmith. This is about what's in your heart, my friend.
But here's okay. So we're talking about values, because I think this is a fantastic conversation. We're going to get a lot of comments on this. Mo, my values come from treating people with the ability to keep their own counsel, not to be dictated by some bureaucracy 3,000 miles away for people that have never made payroll to determine what you should and shouldn't do. My values come from the fact that I believe that if you allow a society to promulgate success and wealth through individual effort, then people are able to take care of each other. I don't think the government has the ability to take care of those that can't or won't. I think that comes from the local communities. So that's a discussion from an economics standpoint, because you pointed out my perspective is from an economic perspective. I believe economics, freedom, free markets allow for those values to prosper, not from some centralized government 3,000 miles away.
You know, we could find common ground on this topic. I promise you that. Okay. If we went back and played tape of me on TV 4 months ago, you'd hear me talking about the fact that socialism was not the solution to our nation's problems or challenges.
Yeah.
I was bashing socialism and Bernie Sanders every single day. Okay. So I don't disagree with you, but where all I'm saying, and I'm not questioning your values, by the way, I acknowledged your values. They seem to be driven by economics. And I think you just did a beautiful job of explaining how the values that I'm speaking of are tied into the economic concerns you have.
Thank
and
you.
I appreciate that explanation, and I respect that, actually. My only thing is I'm talking about a different kind of value, I think. Maybe it's because who knows why? I don't know where they came from. I think it was my parents that instilled them in me, frankly. But maybe it's because I'm Latino. We tend to be a little emotional and a little dramatic, and we talk with our hands, and, you know. But who knows? But to me, the values I'm speaking of are what I feel is missing right now in our country, and that's this kind of dialogue. We haven't cussed each other out. We have not yelled at each other.
I wish we could have a beer together. We can't go out.
I was about to say, we're going to have a whiskey together at some point.
Yeah.
Because, you see, we don't have to hate each other because we don't understand everything about each other.
Right.
Right? Because we can come and find common ground. And I think at the end of the day, we both want what's best for humanity. And that's what I'm talking about by values.
Yeah.
You want to get there just a little different way. This is what I used to say to Bernie's people.
Yep.
We all look. I can even tell you're a Republican and you lean a little bit of right of center.
I'm technically not a Republican, by the way. I'm not registered, but I do vote conservative values.
Okay, that's fine. That's awesome. But here's the deal. I bet you agree that America would be better. Don't run with the comment. I'm just going to make a statement and then don't go any further with it. America would be better if every American had access to health insurance and quality health care. Hard stop. Not how, but we would be better if everybody was covered.
I say this. I've been saying this. This is episode 235 or whatever the number is. I've been saying this for hundreds.
Congratulations.
Of episodes. Okay. I say this, and that is this: the left and the right, we agree on the ends. We don't agree on the means.
It's not just the left and the right. This is my whole point. It's the left and the extreme left.
Well, the 80%
right
around the middle.
Right.
Forget the extremes. The 80% around the middles. Okay. My friend Ken Emmons, he wrote a book. It's called The 80% Majority. 40% on the left and 40% on the right. Forget the Twitterverse crazies.
That's centrist. It's that center.
Yep.
And I'll tell you, look, we all agree. Again, it's just how do you get there?
Yeah.
But I do believe that you and I have a shared common mission, which is.
I think we all do. We all do.
Not everybody does, because I think some people, unfortunately, what I saw on the TV last night in Michigan, that worries me.
Yeah, but again, it's this very small percentage of most people were horrified. Conservatives that I know were horrified because first of all, the aesthetics, the visual, it isn't going to help anybody on the right.
Dave, it wasn't, and I grew up in Texas as a hunter.
Yeah,
those weren't little bitty guns. Those were
no, I know. I'm with you,
bazooka.
and we know there were militias in Michigan, and I said it all along. Oh, this isn't a good look. Last question for you, because I greatly appreciate you taking the time, Mo. I feel like we could have a discussion for hours on everything going on. You're so.
And I hope we do again.
Open, yeah, likewise. Joe Biden, whether the convention is going to be held in Wisconsin in July, August, whenever it's going to be, or if it's going to be virtual, that is when we're going to be learning about a vice presidential pick. He has stated specifically that he is looking for a woman, maybe a woman of color. You're seeing Stacey Abrams jockeying. They're talking about Gretchen Whitmer, others as well. Two questions. A, why would a presidential candidate specifically state that they're looking for a specific demographic? Isn't that identity politics that is going to not look good? And B, do you have any insight as to where they may be looking right now?
To the first question, no. To the second question, no special insight. That the Biden family are personal friends of mine, but I don't ask those types of questions because I trust that there's nobody I know on the earth right now that would be better equipped and prepared to pick a vice presidential candidate running mate, because he did it for 8 years. He knows what characteristics and traits are necessary to properly perform the duties. So I trust that he's going to make an excellent selection. As for the identity politics, I just don't see it that way. But I will be honest with you, as I have been this entire time, and with your listeners. I'm not a huge fan of identity politics because I like to try to think of us as a global human family. Unfortunately, we're not there yet, right? We're not there where we have to, where we can completely dismantle these identifications, right? That still are necessary for people who are unfortunately still rooted in some type of a discriminatory practices or evil or hatred or cruelty. However, I don't see this at all that way. I think the vice president, I feel confident that when he made that statement, and he's going to stick by it, I'm confident he will do that. I think where he was coming from was not identity politics, Dave, but I think what he was saying was it's about damn time that women who make up, think about it, the heart and soul of our families, many times, frankly, the leaders of our families. It's perceived that the dad is, but it usually isn't, it's the mom. And women leaders, and across the world, we're seeing women leaders lead their countries, even in this time of crisis, who are doing an exemplary job. And I think the vice president was coming from a place of, I want a woman to be vice president because it's about time they're at the desk and at the table for every single discussion, on every single policy, on every single decision. And to him, I think it was a matter of simply saying, I want the most talented, most equipped, most prepared, and I want a total equal playing field here. And that's what I think was his driving.
So this is what a lot of people heard. They heard that meritocracy doesn't matter. It's time for a woman. Forget the fact that we had Geraldine Ferraro, we had Sarah Palin, we had Hillary Clinton as nominees. Okay, it's that, and what people heard was that his primary focus, forget meritocracy. My first question is, what is the plumbing? And I think a lot of people have a problem with that, Mo. Don't you?
No, I don't. I'll tell you why. Let me just spew out a few names. This is why people don't have a problem with it. Let's start on the West Coast. Kamala Harris. Nevada, Catherine Cortez Masto. Amy Klobuchar in Minnesota. Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan. Tammy Duckworth in Illinois. Elizabeth Warren in Massachusetts. Michelle Obama in Washington, D.C. And you could just go on and on. What am I saying by all that? Why would that bother you? Those are brilliant women prepared to take that office immediately and are prepared to be the president, God forbid, if necessary. So why would that bother anybody? You'd have to be pretty insecure for that to bother you.
You're reversing the question without answering it. With all due respect, you're pointing out different politicians that have achieved success in their own right. They have a lot of fans and voters around the country that support those individuals. Mm-hmm. And if Vice President Biden sat down and he took a look at his short list, mm-hmm. why would he focus purely on the gender first, as he has presented? That is his priority. Over the meritocracy or the achievement of somebody first. That's the question.
So let me ask you this: why would he not?
Because I think that is sexism. I think that is absolutely 100%. It goes against what we have been taught for the past 30, 40, 50 years. Martin Luther King, you do not judge a man by the color of his skin. Well, you can say that about the gender or the sexuality preferences. It's the content of the character and the meritocracy. I think that is the issue that a lot of people walked away from that statement by Joe Biden, saying, okay, so his first priority is a woman. What if it's his first priority is a black woman or a woman of Mexican descent? What if is that the first priority? And if so, isn't that sexist? Isn't that going against? I am not choosing a man. I am choosing a woman because that man is a man. I think that's the issue.
I understand your concern. I look at it completely the opposite. In fact, I think it's the opposite of sexism, because what the vice president is saying by making that statement and using that as a criteria right now for his selection is simply this. Every time I look at a picture of a Donald Trump meeting, it's all white men, Dave. And nothing against white men.
No, Mo, come on. Take a look at the number of African Americans, Hispanics, females that he has in almost every.
I'm Latino. Name a Latino you've seen in the White House.
Name a Latino?
Yeah, you just said there were Hispanics around him. I've never seen one.
Yeah, in fact, there's a couple of people that I know that are working in the White House, and I can't say their names, so they're not.
I've never seen them on camera. I've never seen them in the media. I've never heard of them. Never. Okay. And name an African American that's at the table. I've never seen one on the nightly news. Never. Omarosa left a long time ago. She was the most high-profile one.
Dr. Ben Carson is there. He's involved in a very deep level. My point being is this: is that the reality is that coming from a perspective of somebody that is unfortunately, because this is cancerous, a voracious consumer of political news. So I'm watching a lot of news across all.
It's called a junkie.
Yeah, it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. Unfortunately, I caught the bug in the 90s. And all right,
it's a disease. I've been saying that for years, by the way.
It's not a good thing.
It's a disease.
So my point being is that I believe that I understand where many progressives are coming from. And you said that you disagree with some of the issues that are coming out from the far left. You didn't like some of the socialist issues.
This is not one of them.
Right. So, but my point is that when you have people that are purely focused on individual labels, the individual race, the sex, the gender first as a priority, I find that is 100% hypocritical, because we're supposed to not see that. That's the goal for the left.
I'll make a deal. I'll make a deal with you right here on your show. As an openly gay man in these United States of America, the day that I'm treated with true equality, I'll agree with you.
What equality do you not have? I didn't know that you were gay, so I mean.
Let me, if you don't mind me finishing this thought,
please.
And I mean it from the bottom of my heart. The day that I don't see homophobia, because that's the world you're speaking about. And the day that I don't see it, I'll be happy to say to you, you don't even have to think about that I'm a gay man, because I don't care whether you know or think about it at all. Although I think it's the greatest gift that God gave me.
I don't particularly care.
But until
I value you based upon your actions that you take.
But you are a special soul.
No, I'm not. Most people feel the way that I feel.
No, they do not.
Yes, they do. And how do you legislate people's internal feelings?
I didn't say you legislate.
Okay.
This is what I talk about, values. I'm consistent about this. The values that I was talking about, that I want your children to be able to grow up in a world where they don't think of me as a gay man. They just think because I was kind to them.
Yeah, but most people that I know, and I know a lot of people in deep conservative circles. I do a lot of conventions. I do a lot of media. I've got a lot of friends. And and this is anecdotal. I'm not suggesting that I know every conservative out there. Of course, there are people that are idiots and they are bigots on both left and right. By the way,
we can agree on that.
My point is that most people, decent people, we talk about the 40% around the middle.
Yeah, they're decent. I agree with you, but it's the fringes, my friend.
But and you can't. So how do you?
I didn't talk about legislating. I'm not talking about legislating.
How do you do it? How do you do it? How do you fix it?
You do it by example. This is what I was talking about with Donald Trump. I don't want your children to grow up seeing these hateful tweets and calling people names. Is that what you want your children to be like?
No,
I don't want your children to be like that.
As a parent, I would.
And they're not my children, and I don't want your kids to be like that.
My kids would not, and most children would not be so swayed by a politician or a celebrity or something.
Please tell that to the 32% of people who are okay with everything he does and says, and they don't criticize, and they own it, and they're proud of it. It's nothing to be proud of, Dave, and you know that. That's my whole point. If all of you would just own the fact that this is not good or healthy or positive.
Yeah. So I think it comes back to the question that you raised earlier in the discussion, which is, I think, the preeminent point in all of this, and that is, what is your values? And I find my values not through a rabbi, priest, a politician, or a celebrity. I find my values internally based upon common sense, my life experience, how I was raised by my parents, and my children would receive the same. The president is a placeholder. And in the meantime, if the economy, before all of this, is doing very well, there's more opportunities for people. People are healthier because the economy is doing better.
And they're also going to be more hateful. And if you're okay with that,
I disagree.
then have at it.
I disagree.
I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with that. I would be happy to have an extra $500 million in my wallet, but I'd rather not have $500 million and live in a world where people treat each other with dignity, with respect and love and kindness and compassion and empathy.
So, boy, you know, we're kind of coming to the end, but I feel like this is a discussion that we can have for hours. Holy cow.
We definitely need a whiskey, though.
We definitely need a whiskey. Do you have a favorite?
What now?
Do you have a favorite?
You know what? I'm not an aficionado, but I am confident that you could teach me.
I would love to. And I'd love to sit down, and if you're on the West Coast, or hopefully one day when I'm on the East Coast, maybe we can. All right, yeah. I'm going to let you go. I know you're a busy man. This is a fantastic conversation. Tell our folks where they can find you, where they can learn more about you. Are you on social media? Do you have?
I am.
Writing?
I am on my Twitter at Moe Vela, Moevela.
Okay.
And that's probably the best way to follow me. You're not going to like probably everything I tweet, but hey, at least you can cuss me out. That's fine too. But more importantly, Dave, I'll tell you how we're going to end this. We're going to end this the way I end all of these, and that is with a big, warm hug, my friend.
You got it.
Thank you for the time.
Mo, thank you so much for taking the time. Greatly appreciate it. And we must have you back on again, especially as we get deeper into the.
I look forward to it. And please take care of your family and stay healthy.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Take care.
And thank you also for joining us here at Whiskey Politics again. Wasn't that a good discussion? I thought so. You know, there were certain points that I was thinking I wanted to make and whether I wanted to hit him harder on certain things. But, you know, I certainly addressed some issues. He addressed some issues as well. And at the end of the day, going back to what I was just saying, you know, with Kent Emmons talking about the 80% majority, whether you're on the right or the left of the center, most people can agree on certain things. Most people are not just crazy, far left, far right wackos that we see on Twitter. And we can have these discussions. And I think it's important for us as a culture, as a country, and it isn't just the United States that split down political divide. We see this in Western Europe and other parts of the world as well. If we can have these discussions with people that are on the other side of the political aisle, I think this brings us together in a much better way than any one president or politician can do. It's ultimately up to us. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Let us know what you think in the comment section. So join us again next week. We'll have Carrie Severino. And as I mentioned at the beginning, in 2 weeks, we're going to be having Dave Rubin for a sit down, and look forward to that as well. And folks, make sure you don't forget to hit the subscribe button on YouTube and find us at Whiskey Politics on Apple Podcasts. Please hit the 5-star button and give us a quick review. It helps others find us. We'll be back again real soon here at Whiskey Politics. Cheers.